besties, welcome to my June reading wrap up, which I am so excited to be sitting down and filming this video because I have been in a reading slump. I haven't actually been able to pick up a book since March, and then June I managed to read all of these and I am so happy about it. I'm so happy to be out of this reading slump and I hope I don't go back into one anytime soon, but I am just really excited to be talking about the books that I read in the month of June. I also posted my July TBR video, so if you guys want to see what books are on my July TBR, I will have that video linked down below. But with that all being said, let's talk about the 5 books that I read in the month of June. I think it is only fair that I start with the book that actually got me out of this reading slump, and that is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark, which is the first book in the Brutal Birthright series, which is a mafia romance. And I'm more of a contemporary romance girly. I have never read a mafia romance before, so I was like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it or not, but I felt like I just needed something new, like completely out of my comfort zone to pick up, and I'm so glad I picked this one up because I flew through this book. I literally devoured it. It was so good, and I feel like if you're in the same boat as me, if you've never read a mafia romance before but you kind of want to try it out and see if it's your cup of tea, I think this series is a really good place to start. I felt like this was the perfect book to start your mafia romance journey. This is an enemies to lovers, and it's enemies to lovers done right. Like, these enemies absolutely hate each other to the point that they literally try to kill each other. So that's the type of enemies they are, which, like, chef's kiss. I love that. So we're following Ida and Cal. They both come from separate mafia families, I guess you could say. Their families despise each other. Ida and her brothers crash Cal's family party, and Ida accidentally sets fire to the library, and basically kind of as, I don't know, compensation, I guess, the two families meet and they're like, okay, we are going to arrange Ida and Cal to be married. So now they're forced into this marriage even though they absolutely hate each other, and for good reason as well. Like, they have proper reasons for hating each other. I loved this book, the tension between these two characters, their hatred for each other, wedding altar scene. The strawberries make sense, and like, if you read this book, I don't want to talk too much about what happens at the wedding altar, but that scene was like, that was when I was like, yup, this is proper enemies to lovers. Like, so good. The spice was good. Also, this book has illustrations in here. Like, this isn't even a special edition and it has illustrations in it. Like, what? So good. I rated this one 4.5 stars. I am so grateful for Sophie Lark for pulling me out of this reading slump with this book. Who would have thought that a mafia romance would be the book to get me out of a reading slump? Definitely not me, but I really enjoyed it. 4.5 stars. I am so excited to continue with this series. Then I actually read the book that my partner picked out for me. So he picked out a book back in April for me to read, and I got around to reading it like 2 months later, but it's fine because I still read it. And I actually filmed a little reading vlog on YouTube Shorts if you guys want to go check that out. But for that read, he picked out Dream On by Angie Hockman. This cover is literally the prettiest thing ever. Like, the purple, the flowers, absolutely beautiful. And this book had a really interesting, unique concept. I've never read a book with this type of storyline before, so it really intrigued me when I first found out what this book is about. So essentially, this book follows our main character Cass. She goes into a coma, and while she's in this coma, she dreams that she's in a relationship with this guy named Devin. But when she wakes up, Devin doesn't exist. Her family and friends have no clue who he is. She doesn't have any photos with him, but she has all these vivid memories with Devin in her brain, and she can picture him so vividly. A year goes by, and then she actually sees Devin at a flower shop, and his name is Devin, and he looks exactly the same as a Devin she had dreamt in her coma. And all of these memories and random facts that she knows about him is actually relevant to the Devin in real life, which was so weird. I was like expecting this crazy magical fairy tale whimsical moment to be the explanation for this, but it wasn't really necessarily like that. So that's probably on me for having that expectation going in. But obviously with that kind of concept, you'd expect something kind of more on the magical realism side, but it wasn't really like that. I did find quite a few moments, especially the first date with Devin and Cass, to be super cringy. I had secondhand embarrassment reading some parts of this book, and the first half of the book I wasn't super into, but the second half I actually ended up flying through. I ended up really enjoying it, which was really weird because when I was reading the first half I was like, I don't think I'm really into this right now. I don't really like how the story is progressing, and there is a trope that is introduced in here which is a major hit or miss with me, but for me I didn't really mind it. I didn't actually end up minding it at all. Not that it made sense to the story because it really didn't, but I felt like it was, I don't want to say too much without spoiling it, but you'll get it if you do end up reading it. But it wasn't my favorite book ever. I think the concept was amazing. I think it could have been executed better, and I think it could have just been played out a lot better than like how it was actually presented in this book. But I did rate this one 3.5 stars. Then I finally picked up the first book in the Windy City series by Liz Tomford, which was Mile High. Again, I really enjoy this cover. I don't know why, I just really like it. And also it has a playlist, and yes, there are black pages like for the start of each chapter, which I love when books do things like that because it satisfies me. Anyways, this is a professional sports romance. It's an ice hockey romance. We are following the main character Xanders, who is part of the hockey team, and he's like this major playboy. He's really presented to the media as the bad boy of this hockey team, and we're following our main female character who is a flight attendant named Stevie. Stevie is one of the main flight attendants who is set to be their permanent flight attendant on their private jet for I think like a couple of months or a year, I can't really remember. And Xanders and Stevie do not get off on the right foot because Xanders pretty much thinks that Stevie wants him but in reality all she wanted to do was explain the emergency procedures when they were on the flight. They do not get along. Stevie is also one of the only people that actually doesn't care too much about, you know, sleeping with Xanders or being with him or being obsessed with him. So Xanders kind of takes this as his like chase sort of thing, so he's like really intrigued with her, but also he wants to make her life a living hell while she's working. And his character was really frustrating. I did not like his character. He did have a lot of character growth throughout the rest of the story, but for the first half I hated his perspective. I just could not get on board with some of the things that he would think. Like Stevie loves to thrift her clothes, and she also lives with her brother who lives in this like fancy apartment, and when Xanders actually sees her coming out of that apartment building, he's like, there's no way she can afford to live here, blah blah blah, like on a flight attendant salary. Like things like that just like gave me the ick. So his character did give me the ick. Although there was growth within his character, I still just wasn't really a huge fan of him. I did really adore Stevie though. I loved the curvy girl representation. I loved how feisty she was. I just really liked her character, but Xanders for me was just like, no. Like yes, he did have character growth, I just didn't really like him. I did also feel like this book did not need to be 500 pages long. It could have been cut down a lot shorter, and also I felt like the third act breakup dragged on for way too long. Like it did not need to be that long at all. All in all, didn't mind this book. I definitely want to continue the series. I think I'm gonna love the second book because that is a basketball romance, and also the guy in that book seems like a major golden retriever energy type of guy, so I'm really excited for that. But I did rate this one 3 stars. Then I picked up A Risk on Forever by N.S. Perkins. Take this with a grain of salt, but if you've read the book The Me Before You, if you watch that movie, it kind of gives a similar vibe to that, but it's not the same like at all, but like there are similarities sort of, I don't know. So we're following this girl named Adelaide. She gets let off her job and she is looking for another job, and she gets this job to be a caregiver for a woman named Helen who is suffering through ALS. So there is ALS representation, which I actually really enjoyed reading about, but the only thing is Adelaide is quite young and she doesn't really have too much experience besides looking after her mother who had passed away. And Helen's son Matt, he is like, there's no way I'm gonna let this girl who is so young, probably has no experience, be your caregiver. But Helen is like adamant, like, no, I want Adelaide to be my caregiver. There's no ifs, ands or buts about it. So he at start is kind of cold and resentful over Adelaide because he doesn't really trust her to take good care of his mom. But then as the story progresses, they get really close and they find that they do have some similarities, but the only thing is Matt is technically Adelaide's boss. I did really like this book. It was very heartwarming and bittersweet. I knew how this book was going to end, but I still got really emotional obviously towards the end because Helen's character just had my heart, and I loved the kind of found family aspect that came from it, especially because Adelaide did lose her mom and then she kind of looked up to Helen as her own mum. Like they had a very close mother-daughter relationship almost. And I would always love it because Helen would always try to set Matt and Adelaide up together because he thought that they would be a perfect match. And there's also in this book, every chapter kind of ends off with a letter that Helen would write to Adelaide, and those were just so sweet to read. But yeah, I rated this one 4 stars. And then the last book that I read in June was Hopeless by Colleen Hoover. I went into this book completely blind and I did not know what to expect, and honestly I was kind of bored for the first 50% of the story. I wasn't really super connected or invested in the story or the characters, but then guys, the plot twist just came like non-stop after like 60% of the way through the book. I was like shocked at the first plot twist, and then there was another one and another one and another one, and it just kept going and going and going that I just did not want to stop reading the book. So the second half really just like hooked me in because of how the plot twist was playing out. It also ended up being a very emotional and heartfelt story. There were so many moments, but I was just like mouth open wide, gasping, shook the entire time because what the heck. I am actually really glad that I went into this book not knowing anything about what was happening. I didn't know that there was going to be this many plot twists, so I really think the experience of reading this book was just like mind-blowing to me, honestly, because I just did not expect that specifically to be the plot twist. And like the fact that there were so many plot twists in here as well, like it just kept coming, and I was like, can we take a minute to slow down because there's so much going on right now. And then the book title, when you read this book you will know what this book title means, and I was absolutely shook when I figured it out, and I was like, oh my goodness. I've only recently finished this book, so I'm still umming and ahhing about what I want to rate it. I feel like it's not a 3-star read, but it's definitely not a 4-star read. But I feel like I don't want to rate it 3.5 stars because I feel like that's a little too low. So I don't really know too much, but I think I'm going to stick with a 3.75 star rating. I feel like that makes the most sense to me. Did not expect it to turn out to be what it was, but wow. Anyways, those are all the books that I've read in the month of June. I am so happy to have gotten back into my little reading groove, and I hope that continues on to July. But if you guys enjoyed watching this video, please be sure to give it a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below. Like I said, my July TBR is already up, so go check that out if you haven't already, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!